Hey there safari lovers, my name is Brian and welcome to Safari Life, where I chat about all things safari, also take you out into the field. Today's topic, best place in the world to see leopards in the wild. Now before I started travelling to Africa, and even during that period of time, I'd read trip reviews of various people that have been on safari, and the usual story might be, we saw this animal, that animal, the lodge was really good, the people were lovely, the food was great, but it often ends, or part of the story is normally, we didn't see a leopard, or we caught a fleeting glimpse of a leopard. Now on two previous trips to East Africa, where my first two safaris were, we saw leopards 3 times. The first time there was a leopard in a tree with a kill. We got in a line up behind about 30 cars. You could barely see what was going on. You could tell there was a leopard, but it wasn't a great view. On the second occasion I went to East Africa, we saw 2 leopards, one again from a great distance, maybe 100 metres, and I wouldn't have spotted it, the guide spotted it. And then we had one really good look of a leopard who had just made a fresh kill, so that was amazing. And while we were there chatting to someone else at one of our camps, someone there gave me a tip, and that really turned things around when it came to seeing leopards. And I really wanted to see a leopard. I wanted to see a lot of leopards if possible, but I really didn't know where. Even if all my research up into that period of time, I still hadn't heard much. People weren't saying, well, I was here, didn't see leopards, and then I went there and I did. But we got this tip off this other safari goer. Now before I get on to where that tip leads us, I'm going to talk about a couple of the other 2 areas that get mentioned a lot when it comes to leopards. And I've got some notes here just to make sure I cover all the bases. Now the first one is Yala National Park in Sri Lanka. Now before I went to what I would call the leopard hotspot, the best place in the world to see leopards in the wild, Yala was on the hit list because, well, it was purported that they had the highest density of leopards per square kilometre in the world. So that obviously just sounded good straight off the bat. Now the problem seemed to be, the more I delved into it, was actually being able to see these leopards. And almost all the reviews I've read about the leopards in Yala, and this also includes stories of people I know that live in South Africa, know leopards well and went to Yala. They all seem to say the same story, that they are shy and elusive and difficult to see, and you may not see a leopard in Yala if that's really what you want to go there for. I've also read a bunch of reports about, it's almost like a free-for-all. There doesn't seem to be too many rules or regulations about how many, about how many vehicles are allowed into Yala. So even if you have a sighting of a leopard, I've heard stories of 50, 60, 100 vehicles just packed around there, which is not a great experience. So we took Yala off the table. Now secondly, the other place before I get to my hotspot is South Lawanga National Park in Zambia. Excuse me for a sec. Now I know a lot of people, because I'm a keen wildlife photographer, who have gone to South Lawanga and I've seen their shots of leopards. So there is definitely really good chances of seeing leopards in South Lawanga. They do night drives there as well. The problem for me with night drives, because apparently that's when a lot of the sightings at South Lawanga are, at night, is it's cool if it's deciding you just want to go for the sightings, and others may argue, but for me, for photography, night photography is never optimal compared to photography in the daylight hours. I mean, you've got to have very, very good lighting, and even with flashes and things like that, you can do it, and I do have some good night shots, but I mean, you're still using artificial light. The other thing with South Lawanga is it is a Zambian national park run by, I guess, whatever authority, government authority, and there's no off-road driving in South Lawanga. So maybe there's leopard tracks leading out into the forest, but you can't follow in there. The one thing that I've got about South Lawanga, or one of the good things, is it has a really broad range of accommodation. So you can camp, just your basic, take your own camp, self-catering style. They also have small, like self-catering cottages if you don't want to be in a tent, right up to, you know, high-end lodges and glamping. They also offer seasonal rates. Now, not every place in Africa does this, but they offer seasonal rates. So if you go in, say, the low or shoulder season, you can save even more. I don't think it really matters so much with the leopards, except for if you have a wet season, it's always more difficult to spot a lot of wildlife when there's a lot of green growth around, and that's just the fact of the matter. But, you know, the shoulder season leads into the high season, so go a week before, whatever. But they have a really good range of accommodation compared to the place I'm about to talk about now. This is the place that, in my opinion, is the best place in the world to see leopards in the wild. And this is the tip that we got off another safari goer in East Africa. And it is the Sabi Sands in South Africa. Now, the Sabi Sands is made up of a group of private reserves. It's basically like mapped out. You'll see them on a map that'll be just small little sections that are owned by a single owner. And there might be, I don't know, 15, I don't know the exact number if you look on the map, I've never counted them, but there'll be a bunch of these. So it's private land with no fences, and there's no fences. They basically border Kruger National Park, but it's open to Kruger. There's no fences, so animals are free to go in and out of Kruger into Sabi Sands and vice versa. Now, out of the 42 game drives that we did in the Sabi Sands over several years, we saw leopards on 38 of those. Now, that is one heck of a hit rate. It's not just the fact that we saw leopards on 38 game drives. It's quite common that on any game drive, you'll see several leopards on a game drive. You're talking 2 or 3 hours and you might see 3 leopards, 2, 3 leopards, maybe 4 if you're really lucky on a game drive. But it's quite common to do that. It's quite amazing. And these aren't just those kind of casual glimpses, pair of eyes peering through the leaves, or you see a tail wagging as it toddles off into the bush. I mean, I'm talking about close encounters of the leopard kind. Now, within sometimes a few metres, because they're used to vehicles, they have a territory, so they're used to the vehicles in their territory. So they're quite habitualised. Some are a little bit more shy, but most of them will walk past a vehicle like they're not even there. It's just nothing to them. Also, I mean, I've seen pictures of leopards walking through lodges or sitting out the front of someone's deck, because if they're born near there or they've got a territory near there, they'll often associate the lodge as a comfortable place to be. Now, I've never seen it. It is pretty amazing when you see the photos, I've got to tell you. When you walk through the door and you see someone taking a photo of a leopard on the front deck out the front of where their suite, it's pretty amazing. But we have had all sorts of encounters. We've had mothers with cubs. We've seen mating. We've seen leopards with kills on numerous occasions. On termite mounds, beautiful, laying out on trees, on branches, just really classic shots. And this is what's really cool, or one of the cool things, is if you give yourself enough time, even just like a few days, you're going to generally, especially if you have a decent camera setup. In fact, you'll get really good shots. But in fact, because of the close encounters you get, it is one of the few places, I believe, that even if you've got your iPhone, because you could pull up next to a leopard 3 metres away on a termite mound and just do your little expand thing and come away with a great photo that you probably will not get anywhere else, at least not on the same frequency and not to the same degree of opportunity, because you might have several opportunities over a few days to get a few pictures even with your smartphone. So the other thing is that the guides in the vehicles are always in communication. So they got walkie-talkies, they got that, and if one has a leopard sighting, they'll call in, they'll let the other guides know where the leopard sighting is. So they'll let them know we're here, and then you kind of wait your turn, and then when they're ready to leave. So they don't just hang around there all day long. If there's no other vehicles around, they're free to sit there for a while with the leopard. But generally, if there's a lineup of vehicles that want to come in, then you might spend 10 or 15 minutes with the leopard, but it could be up to half an hour. Just depends how many vehicles they are. Now, the other advantage, or another advantage of the Sabi Sands, is at a sighting of a leopard or a lion or lions, but a sighting of a leopard, there's only 3 vehicles allowed at the sighting at a time. So you will never get this overcrowding business that you get in other places. It just doesn't happen. And if a mother leopard has a small cub, they won't let you near newborns. They have to be a certain age. So maybe a few weeks or whatever on. But if a mother has a cub, they only allow 1 vehicle at a sighting. The other thing is, because it's privately owned land, they're allowed to responsibly go off-road. So a tracker might see some leopard tracks, go into the bush, come back, tell the ranger, tell the guide, we've got a leopard here, and then you can go off-road to wherever the leopard is. I mean, we've been uphill and down dale and down into creeks and all the rest of it. I mean, the advantages are unbelievable to be able to just take off road and go to wherever that leopard might be situated. It's crazy where some of these land cruisers will go into. They're very good drivers. So they're some of the main reasons why I believe Sabi Sands is the best place in the world to see leopards in the wild. Now, one of the tips with the reserves, okay, so you've got a couple of large ones around Sabi Sands, or in the Sabi Sands region, Londolozi and Mala Mala. Now, they have big areas, so, they might have 6 or 7 or 8 leopards living in their own area. If you're not staying in the big ones like Londo or Mala Mala, I recommend that you look for a lodge that is able to traverse onto other lodges' property. They enter into an agreement where you may be able to go to 3 or 4 properties. And it's a big advantage, because it means, you don't want Fred next door is going, we've got a great leopard sighting, and they say, we don't have an agreement that you can come onto our land. And it's invisible borders. You don't even know they're there unless someone tells you we're on someone else's property. But look for a lodge. Now, we stayed at a lodge called Elephant Plains. It's Elephant Plains Game Reserve. And they had a traverse. It's in the northern section. They had a traverse over 3 or 4 properties. So that, again, is a big advantage to be able to do that. So bear that in mind when you're going to book, because I have heard of small properties where they can't leave and they don't have as much luck with the sightings, or not even luck. It takes an element of luck out of it when you can traverse on other people's properties when they let the guides know, hey, got a leopard, come in and join us in the lineup. Okay. Now, I'd also say that both Londolozi and Mala Mala have YouTube channels, so check them out. So if you want to see for yourself what I mean about leopards in the Sabi Sands and how often these guys see them, or how often you would see them, then check out the YouTube channel, because you'll see a lot of sightings. The other thing about the leopards that you may see, a lot of fans of these leopards have set up Facebook pages. So even when you get back home, you still have that connection. So if you've got a leopard that you've seen there, Pounds to Peanuts, they've probably got a Facebook page that you can go and follow later on and see, you know, literally see them from a cub going through the different stages of life. And I've done them myself. The downside of the Sabi Sands is there's no such thing as cheap Sabi Sands. Now, the cheapest lodge or lodges there, and there's not many, started around $700 US a night. So that's $700 US a night for 3 meals, your accommodation, 2 game drives a day for 2 people. Okay, but they can go up to thousands upon thousands. It's got nothing to do with game viewing. It just depends how luxe you want to go and if you think luxury is worth that much. The game viewing doesn't change. You can be in the cheapest lodge in Sabi Sands and have just as good an experience with all your sightings. So apart from the cost, if you really want to have that unforgettable leopard experience, save your pennies and head to the Sabi Sands. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.